"May I ask what you're doing, sir?" said the man to my left, just outside my car window. "Yes, you may," I replied. "Ask away." "That's not exactly what I meant," the voice said. "I want to know what you're doing." Of course, I noticed and was well aware that the person asking was wearing the uniform of a city cop. I wasn't so drunk that I didn't realize that fact. I was feeling pretty good by this point. The reason for my flippant response was that I didn't care about anything right now, especially stupid questions, no matter who was asking them. I'm sitting here admiring the moonlight reflecting in the lake, sipping my select whiskey from a single cask. It's a soothing sight, I replied. I don't like to be pretentious, but I like the flavor of this particular whiskey. I spent the extra money to buy it and I intend to enjoy it. And if I may say so, it's a bit better than the blended varieties on offer, at least this time around. And something about the moonlight is soothing. "Sir, are you drunk?" a voice asked. "Almost," I replied. "I hope to be there soon. In fact, I'm hoping to kill a few brain cells tonight. I'd like to destroy a few million suckers who tell me I love that bitch I'm married to. At the very least, I'd like to get to the point where I can get rid of her without much remorse." "Okay, we can get to that in a minute," the voice said. "You do realize that driving while intoxicated is a criminal offense?" "Yes, sir, I understand that," I replied. "But I would like to point out that I am not driving the vehicle. I am simply sitting in it, drinking and getting drunk. This vehicle is equipped to not operate, or at least not move, if the driver is intoxicated. The driver must enter a 4-digit PIN and blow into this device." I pointed to the straw above the ignition switch. "Any alcohol content in excess of 3/4 of the legal limit renders the vehicle inoperable. I am definitely not fit to drive this vehicle." The voice pointed to the interior lights on and the radio, or at least the audio system. "Yes, everything works," I said. "I want to be able to see well enough not to spill the whiskey. I can listen to music if I want to, but right now I just need a little background noise. It's cool enough in here that I don't need air conditioning." I'd also like to point out that while the engine can automatically turn on from time to time to recharge the battery, you can't put the car in gear and drive, I added. "So care to explain why you're sitting here in a city park drinking?" a voice suggested. I looked at it carefully. "Well, sir," I offered, "I needed a place to sit and gather my thoughts. The house doesn't lend itself to that at the moment." I wondered how he would react to my changed manner of speech. "You may not call me sir. Officer will suffice, or you can call me by my first name, Gary," he said. "May I see your driver's license?" I held them out to him and he handed them to his partner. I'm sure he'd already checked the license plate, so he knew it belonged to me. Maybe he was just checking to see who was using the car. I almost laughed out loud. I can understand some of the politically correct crap society feeds us, but for police officers to call themselves by their first name in a non-violent altercation? The guy looked unfazed. "Well, instead of calling you sir of 3 syllables, I decided to shorten it and call you sir," I said. He gave me a hard look and then grinned. "You're not that drunk, are you?" he asked. He could tell I was just playing smart. "Oh yeah, I'm that drunk anyway," I replied. "It's just that I'm not that stupid and I can hold my own. At least not right now. I really don't care if I'm too drunk to handle it." I saw the cop's partner step back to give me my license back. They clearly weren't going to leave, but they didn't order me out of the car either. I wondered about that. They stood hunched over and looked at me, feeling uncomfortable. Both refused my offers of a drink or to sit in my car where they could relax. Their sergeant came over and talked to them. I guessed later that they had quickly established my identity when the first officer returned, walked around the car and sat in the passenger seat. "How about we have a little chat, Mr. Jacobs?" I liked this young man. I told him that the last Mr. Jacobs I knew was my father. My name was John. He smiled and nodded. He then asked if I needed to call someone. I shook my head and replied that no, not unless I was forbidden to continue drinking, in which case he could call my lawyer. "You are allowed to drink alcoholic beverages in the park until 2 in the morning, he said. "Then I'm going to sit here until I'm ready to leave and either call an Uber or have my daughter come get me. Either way, I'll need to talk to her. By the way, why did you decide to sit with me?" "I got special permission. I don't know exactly why. The sergeant told me to sit with you and talk," he offered. "Why? What do you know about me?" I asked. "Nothing much. It all started with a simple man drinking in a car in the park call. Once we established your identity, I was told to sit down and start talking, and here I am. I have no idea what that means. My sergeant said I could drink if the situation called for it. He'll sign it. That fact alone makes me think there's more to the story, but I'm still not drinking beer or whiskey. Do you have any soda or water? The young policeman said. It's whiskey from the same barrel. It's almost sacrilege to dilute it, I exclaimed with a smirk. But there might be a soda in the refrigerator behind your chair that you might like. I like to have something caffeinated every now and then, so I have something in stock. He reached back to open the built-in refrigerator. What kind of machine is this? From the outside, it looks like a regular little hybrid, but everything about it is high-tech. This is no ordinary car, he asked. Who are you? I ignored the young policeman's obvious confusion and changed the subject by asking, Are you married? He shook his head. Well, I'll be married for a while yet. Have you ever thought about marriage, or rather the sanctity of marriage? Fidelity versus infidelity? Well, yes, Gary offered hesitantly. I would expect my wife not to have fun with anyone, and I certainly wouldn't. I had a girlfriend who thought that since we weren't married, she could have sex with whoever she wanted. We stopped being together as soon as I caught her with a guy in our apartment. I asked him what he had done. I almost did so much that I got kicked off the police force. I showed him my service weapon. When I got home, he was already having fun with it. If I'd known it was being recorded, I might have hit him, but I never would have pulled my weapon. I laughed and held out my fist for a punch. He grinned back. Sure, he begged, cried, almost shit himself, and then tried to file a complaint. They took him aside and told him he'd have a hard time if he pursued anything, and he couldn't even walk down the street without showing his ID every block or two. And if he spit on the sidewalk, he would be arrested. He realized this and left town. I got a letter of reprimand anyway, of course. It was a total gift, and only because a senior officer had gotten into a similar situation a few months before and was covered up. Well, that's a better story than mine, I admitted. I would have loved to have caught the bastard while he was entertaining my wife. I probably would have pulled the trigger, even if the bastard was half my size and a dozen years younger. Gary looked at me. Okay, I take it your wife is cheating, and you know who it is. I nodded. This guy was perceptive. You didn't catch them in the act? I shook my head. My wife Donna said that stupid line to me. We need to talk. She didn't even say darling. I don't respect her any more than I respect Rodney Dangerfield, I said. I got home after a long day at work and there was my wife and sister-in-law waiting for me with a couple of small suitcases. I walked through the door and was ambushed. Shit, Gary exclaimed. What happened? They told me I was a worthless bastard, I said, taking a sip of whiskey. Well, not in those terms. My wife says she found someone more interesting, more suited to her needs than me. Doris, her sister, sits back and smirks as she listens to me. I ask her what she's talking about and she says she's found a real man who puts her needs before his and makes her feel like a real woman, I said. Her sister nods like one of those little dogs you see on the back window of a car. And then the bitch, I mean sister-in-law, says he has enough money to support her the way she deserves. So no arguments or talk of divorce. You better get over it and let her have fun without any nonsense. She went on to say that this guy is man enough to handle both of them and rock their boats. So apparently both women are whores to this guy. That's what's offensive, not the she cheated part. I didn't even have time to fully realize that part. It was that I hadn't met her needs or made her feel like a woman. Oddly enough, that was exactly what my first thought was. Plus, I couldn't or wouldn't support her. I have to admit I was confused. Donna has never complained about our sex life before, so I know I'm adequate and good for her in that regard, but I was clearly wrong about supporting her lifestyle. You think I modified this car so I wouldn't get behind the wheel drunk? I built it because my brother-in-law was a chronic drunk and I was trying to protect his ass. So he would do his duty as a member of a large family. Before he would get behind the wheel after drinking, he had to enter his PIN and blow into the analyzer. I always suspected he drank so much because of his bitch of a wife. He was a nice guy and stayed with her because of his kids, even though they were grown. One night, this idiot couldn't start his car and agreed to give one of his drunk friends a ride, and they both died. I took the car back. Let's get back to your wife, Mr. Jacobs, the young policeman said patiently. I asked him to call me John. All right, John. Tell me about how you met your wife. I grinned. You're writing that down, aren't you? I still can't understand why you're sitting here with me. What? Do you have a degree in psychology or something? Is this one of those newfangled woke interventions? I asked, taking a sip. Not that I care. I'm going to sit here and drink until you arrest me or I have to pee. Oh, I get it. You'll wait until I come out and arrest me for either public intoxication or urinating in a public place. Gary shook his head. No, neither of those is anything more than a minor fine. One of my bosses made the decision that I should sit here with you, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. I have an engineering background. I went to school through the ROTC program, and after college, I served 4 years in the Army. After I got discharged, I needed a job, and the police department was just hiring. So 2 years later, here I am. An engineer, huh? I said. Well, maybe later I'll show you how this machine works. Maybe you'll enjoy the tour. Anyway, back to my story. My wife Donna told me I was worthless shit. That's not exactly her words, but the meaning is the same. Her sister agreed. They picked up their small suitcases and, laughing, headed out the door. My wife said she'd be home Sunday afternoon or evening and we'd talk it over. I'm not likely to be there, I muttered. I have a daughter who just graduated from college and I need to call her, but I'm a little wary. She's at such a vulnerable age right now, trying to start a career and maybe a social life, living on her own for the first time. How am I going to tell her that her mom is a cheating whore? Worse, what if she already knew and was afraid to tell me? Even worse, what if she knew and condoned my wife's cheating? I wouldn't survive such a betrayal. I began to shake. I almost fainted. Hey, kid, Gary said sharply to bring me out of my reverie. I mean, John, Mr. Jacobs. He paused to regroup. Let's deal with this in order. You haven't spoken to your daughter, have you? I nodded and then shook my head, not knowing how to answer. Tell me about her, Gary said. I relaxed a little. I love my daughter. She came along just a year after my wife and I got married. We got married when we were both still in college. My wife said no more kids, so that's it. One child, regardless of my wishes. I know what you're thinking, but yes, my daughter is mine. She even looks like me, or rather other women on my side of the family. Thank God she's not as ugly as me. Gary laughed, and I was relieved. She's smart as a whip and decided to study computers instead of engineering, even though she has aptitude. Maybe you should call her right now, Gary suggested. I groaned and shook my head. He shrugged, but I realized he wasn't going to let it go unchallenged. Later, maybe. I agreed, not thrilled with the idea. I don't want to leave my car here, and I'll need a ride. I need to get things sorted out. I'm just not ready to drive. That's part of what I'm thinking about. I'm making plans on how I'm going to proceed. If you keep drinking whiskey, you won't remember any of those plans anyway, Gary suggested. Of course I'll remember, I said. I have a tape recorder. I take notes. I'm sorry, I should have told you that our conversation is automatically recorded. I just assumed you had your camera on. I expect everything I say to be recorded. So, do you know who your wife is dating? Gary asked. I nodded my head. At that time, he got a call on his radio. He walked away from my car. A few minutes later, he came back. Mr. Jacobs, what do you do at eSync Robotics? He asked. I shrugged and replied that I was an engineer. Gary smiled. More to the point, a very high-ranking engineer, right? I nodded. Now, this isn't just a sit-down-and-talk thing. My captain said you're the man who designed some of their advanced prosthetics. He was just on the line. He said his daughter is walking again thanks to you. You developed a prototype prosthetic limb. They help existing limbs function properly. That answers the question of why I'm sitting here talking to you. He personally asked me to give you an update. I shrugged. He is clearly interested in you. Please, sir, Mr. Jacobs, don't ruin my mood. I realized he should have kept some of what he said to himself. I wondered how Eddie knew I'd been contacted by his officers. I suspected that he had tagged my name so that he would be immediately informed of anything that concerned me. It wasn't exactly legal in my opinion, but it was nice that he cared about me. I'd known Eddie since my high school days. His teenage daughter had been in a boating accident 2 years ago and lost the use of her right leg. He gladly allowed me to use his daughter as a test subject for one of my prototypes, and now his daughter is back on her feet and walking again. Eddie and I have remained close, and I was happy to help. I'd like to take you home, sir, Gary said. I firmly declined. How about I take you to a hotel? You'll get a good night's sleep, and tomorrow You'll approach the case with fresh eyes. Really? You think I'll look at the world better tomorrow than I do today? I snapped back. No, I said with fresh eyes. It means with a clear head, Gary explained, making decisions rationally and not clouded by alcohol. I said I liked alcohol and wasn't ready to go anywhere yet. He shrugged it off. He tried to distract me a bit by asking me about the prosthetics I was developing. I told him that it was just one of our divisions. We had several ongoing projects. We were also working on features that would allow us to create self-driving cars. I could see that he was visibly interested in some of the technical aspects. He asked what other projects were in development. We have launched a line of voice-controlled robots to improve the lives of paraplegics, to give them some independence in their daily lives. For example, voice-controlled motorized wheelchairs. Some of our devices can do more than that. We've even worked on robotic arms that can lift objects and even help the user eat. We worked on a robot that could wipe a guy's butt. We had a little hiccup when one of our testers got excited and yelled, "Come on, mess with me, right now." I squinted to see how intently Gary was listening. He stared at me for a second and then burst into laughter. I realized he had a sense of humor too, just like me. "Tell me why you wanted to become a police officer," I asked. "You seem to have technical aptitude and relevant credentials. Why didn't you apply to eSync Robotics?" "Yes, they weren't recruiting. I got an email saying they would keep my resume on file," said Gary. I realized that was a cop-out, and my resume ended up in a file folder. And I needed a decent-paying job locally. My mom needed financial help and my sister is in college. So it's just the way it is. I wasn't so drunk that I couldn't see this guy's potential. "Send me your resume and come see me in a few days. I have a few obvious personal issues to work out first, but I'll see what I can do. That's if you're still interested in that kind of career." He muttered a thank you, then took a deep breath and returned to the task at hand. He wasn't about to let himself be distracted and bribed. "How did you get the name of the guy your wife is dating?" he asked. I followed my wife and her sister to the Marriott. No one pays attention to such a small hybrid sedan. I watched them as they introduced themselves to the guy in the lobby. That was all it took. The guy hugged and kissed both my soon-to-be ex-wife and my sister-in-law. Gary looked at me suspiciously. He hadn't stated the obvious, that I should have known this man, and I did. "Yeah, I know the creep. A smarmy asshole. I'm wondering if he's deliberately determined to cheat me or just playing games, but he's certainly not a rich man who can provide my wife with the better life she thinks she has." "I suppose you make a pretty good living, Mr. Jacobs, John," Gary said. "I mean, if you are a senior engineer after all. Judging by your age and the way you talk about your work, you're already quite an old man. I wonder why your wife thinks she needs more money. Or did she just say that to bother you?" I wonder if Donna is just a money-hungry bitch who's thinking of changing jobs," I said. "Probably both. We have a pretty active sex life a couple times a week. I'm only 45, so I'm not slowing down too much in that regard. At least I don't think so. My wife might argue with that. But she doesn't seem to mind. We seem to be compatible. I think she's just nervous, and talking to her bitchy sister probably gave her those thoughts. My sister-in-law is one of those compulsive personalities. She gambles and wins a few $100. You know, hits a little jackpot. Then she loses it all and goes to the ATM to get more money. She says she hit the jackpot once, so it's bound to happen again. By the end of the night, she's drunk as hell and out of money. She has a decent job that should be enough to live on, but she is constantly broke and can barely pay her bills, even though her kids are grown and out of the house. My wife is constantly bailing her out, and it has become a point of contention. I think she often slips her sister money. In fact, I'm pretty sure she does. I usually try to keep quiet about it. After my brother-in-law died, Doris started seeing different men. I didn't get involved either. I think money is a big part of the problem with my wife. I don't bring home enough money for her. She works as an administrator at the school, so we have a double income. We live well. We have a modest but very nice house, and I paid for my daughter's college tuition so she can avoid student loans. At least once a week, we go out to eat at a nice restaurant. We travel a couple times a year, and she sometimes buys jewelry, especially when we go on cruises. But she wants more. More fancy cars, even though ours are only a couple years old. She got mad when I bought this car from my sister-in-law in exchange for one of our mortgages. She said a simple hybrid was beneath us, even though this car is far from simple. She drives a small sports coupe, but wants more. She argues that I should go out and demand a pay raise. I know I can get it, but she'll just spend the extra money or give it to her sister, and we'll be back to square one. I didn't bother to add that my brother has a better, or at least bigger house than I do and has more kids. I had told Donna years ago that we didn't need a big house with a bunch of useless, unfilled bedrooms. She never budged on the no more kids issue. Not to be a jerk, but it sounds like your wife is unhappy that you're not pushing for a pay raise. It seems to her that you should demand it, even though you consider your lifestyle to be quite normal. She thinks that all you have to do is ask and you'll refuse, Gary suggested. Well, part of it has to do with the fact that my brother is my boss, I said. Gary looked at me in confusion. Yes, Bob is the CEO and general manager. The thing is, we make the same income, which my wife knows about too. It's just that she thinks we both underestimate ourselves. I didn't want to reveal the rest of the story. Not then and not to a man I didn't know well, and who had heard more about my personal life than he should have. Bob and I not only worked at eSync, but we owned it, or rather, our trust owned the controlling interest. We set our income level so that it was comfortable, but not excessive. My older brother Bob was also an engineer, but he liked the business side, so he got an MBA and after graduation started a small firm making computerized control units for various electronics. We used money from our inheritance, which was locked up in a trust. The trust paid for both of us to attend college. Of course, Bob hired me before I even graduated from college. The company paid me while I studied to get my college degree. I was married and had a child at the time, so my wife was happy about the money. We just never communicated about how the company's infrastructure worked. Our families just assumed we were in management positions because we had been with the company since its inception. We hired talent to keep the company running, even though HR hired most of the employees over the years. The trust protected the company, but all of our individual assets were subject to community property laws. That's what I was thinking when Gary and his partner knocked on my window. So your wife thinks you're too soft-hearted to go along with your brother and demand to be paid what you're worth, Gary suggested. I nodded. He hadn't mentioned it or asked, but I could tell he was wondering if I was a wimp. Perhaps in my wife's eyes I was. But I was happy with my job and my current lifestyle. We could live even better if she didn't spend our money on her sister. So have you made any decisions yet? He asked. I answered him that I was going to get a divorce. I wasn't going to put up with disrespect. To hell with 24 years of marriage. I think you need to talk to your daughter. You may be afraid of her reaction, but you need to hear her out, he suggested. I reluctantly nodded. Then he offered to drive me home, and when I flinched, he said, well, your wife won't be there, but I understand why you don't want to stay there, you know? So you won't be perceived as a rejected husband waiting for his wife to come home. I raised my middle finger. He shrugged and smiled, realizing he'd gotten the opposite reaction. If it were me, I'd pack up my wife's things and try to stake out my territory. But if things work out like one of my coworkers, your wife will just move back in. I would at least secure the personal belongings. Change the combination on the safe if you have one. Gather important papers, just no traveling today. I thought about it, I admitted. Just didn't want to risk him getting mad and starting to wreck everything. Or maybe burn everything to the ground. I fantasized about that. The house is paid for, and I don't think it would be a crime if I didn't insure it. Gary shook his head. Getting drunk and staying in a hotel is certainly cheaper than letting anger override common sense and losing your temper. You probably won't get arrested for arson, but your wife could still sue you for destroying her stuff, even if she doesn't press vandalism charges. Besides, she owns half of it all. It's not worth the risk. He frowned. Even the fact that my girlfriend cheated on me wasn't a reason to kick her out of the house, not legally. Since she was already living there and considered the house hers, she could stay. We have stupid laws about evicting people. I asked him what he did. She stayed in the apartment, but that didn't mean I had to stay with her, so I moved all my stuff out, and I mean all my stuff. The furniture was mine, so when I was done, all that was left was her clothes hanging in the closet, and what was in the dresser neatly stacked on the floor. Her toiletries were still in the bathroom, and the computer and all her books and stuff were on the floor. I left food in the fridge because she had bought some of it, but no cup or plate for her to eat from, no pot to cook in. My buddies helped, so they all witnessed that nothing was destroyed or ruined. I had to laugh or cry at the thought that this part of my life was over. My marriage was over. I just couldn't let Donna treat me like that. When Gary once again suggested I call my daughter, I agreed. First, I asked him to drive me to the drugstore to buy a toothbrush and then to the hotel. I stipulated that it would not be a Marriott. As soon as I checked into the hotel, I called my daughter. Gary called one of his coworkers to pick him up, and after we exchanged phone numbers, he left. "Daddy, why are you at the hotel?" My daughter June immediately asked. "Did something happen between you and Mom?" I told her I'd prefer to talk to her in person if she was available. "Hell yeah, I'm free. I'm off to dinner with friends, but I'm always available to help you. I'll be there as soon as I can." As I hung up, I realized I forgot to tell her not to call her mother before our conversation, but then decided I didn't care if she did. "What's going on?" June asked as soon as I opened the door to my room. She frowned, looking at my half-drunk state. "The fact that you're drunk means Mom did something. I think whatever she did was stupid and hurtful. She's not stupid enough to try to kick you out. You would have burrowed into the ground. She left you, didn't she? She went to Aunt Doris's." I asked how she knew that. "I drove by the house, but I didn't stop. Aunt Doris's car is in the driveway, but on one side, in front of your part of the garage. I can't tell if Mom's car was there," June said. "Oh shit. Did they leave together for a party or something?" June said the last word, moving closer to observe my reaction. I nodded. "Shit," she exclaimed, wrapping her arms around me and huddling against me, crying. "I'm so sorry, Daddy." I couldn't help myself and started sobbing. Despite the anger and resentment my wife left in me, I knew my little girl was on my side. I loved her, but I can't put up with this. 24 years wasted, I lamented. "Not the bottom, just a new beginning, Daddy. You have me," June proclaimed as we hugged. I was glad she didn't immediately protest and tell me I needed to forgive. Finally, I had to ask, "Did you know about this? Warned me beforehand?" She shook her head and hesitated before continuing. "Well, I suspected something was wrong. She and Aunt Doris spent a lot of time together. Surely you must have noticed that," June suggested. I agreed. She even stayed overnight at her sister's house sometimes. The light bulb came on. June continued. "Well, Doris does have a lot of fun. I mean, going to bars and dancing and things like that. She hasn't talked about it explicitly, but I'm sure she slept with someone. She'd see some guy and say he had a nice ass. And stuff like that. Mom would say she'd like to do it. Then she'd quickly add something like, 'But I'm married.' And sometimes she'd complain that you could make more money. All you had to do was go and ask for a raise." June blushed. "I hate to say it, but Mom did that a few times. If your daddy had balls, he could have gone and demanded to be paid what he was worth. For goodness sake, he can't even stand up to his own brother." I shrugged and said we had enough money to live well if Donna didn't spend it. "Oh, I know. I've seen her spend money, especially after you wouldn't let me. You gave me an allowance the whole time I was in school. That is, even after all my bills were paid. You told me to consider it as payment for studying and getting good grades. I had to live on that amount or do without. I think you purposely limited me to that amount so that I would learn to budget," June said. She interrupted the conversation by looking in the minibar. "I can't drink this rot gut straight. I need to mix it up. Do you want to pay for this minibar, or do you want me to go down to the lobby and use the soda machine? I need a drink while you tell me what happened." The thought made me laugh. Even now, she rarely looked at me. She was my daughter. First of all, this isn't a Rothgut. It's an expensive single-cask whiskey. It cost me over $50 a bottle. But save the walk. We'll spend the money. Half of it will still go to your mother when we sort out the inheritance. That statement threw June off balance. "So this isn't something you're willing to forget and forgive? It's more than just an argument about money," June said. I told her it was more than that and laid it out in great detail. I told her in detail how I had spent the time from the time I got home until she showed up, including observing the actions of her mother and aunt in the lobby of the Marriott. "The policeman sat with you in your car and then drove you here?" she asked, stunned. I nodded. "He's a nice guy," I said. "Smart. He'll succeed at whatever he does. He gave me some advice, like not coming home and burning the house to the ground or throwing all my mom's shit out on the lawn for the neighbors to see. I'm not going to hide anything from anyone. She made her decision. I've made mine. As far as I'm concerned, I'm going to let everyone know what a cheating bitch she is. Maybe she'll even enjoy the publicity that this dish is on the menu and available. Maybe she's so deluded that she thinks she can change like she promised. Or maybe she's trying to push some kind of agenda to get me to go along with her new decision to do what she wants. After all, she has to realize that she can't have a boyfriend like her sister. Not in the long run. The whole idea is just stupid. That's what she's saying. You've been sitting around thinking about all this while sitting in your car drinking? June asked, mildly amused. I'm not as stupid as everyone thinks, I said. I can think the situation through. Your mother wasn't just suddenly seized by some impulse to become a whore. She and your aunt planned it. It must have been in preparation for some time. June nodded, listening. It used to bother me how much she might have told you, and whether you knew about it. That got a reaction. June stared at me with her mouth open. It turned into a smirk, then softened. Tears appeared in her eyes. You can't believe I might have been in on some plan to screw you over, Daddy. I shook my head. I knew for a fact that she had no idea of her mother's intentions. Tonight, as I sat drinking, all sorts of thoughts came into my head. How it happened, what really happened, who knows, I said. My thoughts were all sorts of different things. Well, I can tell you this, June stated. She may be my mother, but that won't stop me from telling her what a stupid bitch I think she is. She asked me what I plan to do in the near future. I told her what I had told Gary about how he handled his girlfriend's cheating. He's no expert, but I have to applaud the way he handled the situation, I said. He was decisive, acted straightforward, but kept his cool. I hope to be just as cool-headed. But I can tell you there's no turning back. I just can't forgive this. This isn't some one-off drunken mistake that can be smoothed over with counseling. This was a deliberate decision to destroy me, to rub my nose in it. Your mother may try to say it was just sex, or she was just trying to get my attention. Well, if that's the case, she blew it, June said. You've always been hard on me. Not that I couldn't get a lot out of you, but I knew when I was out of line. Your lower lip would quiver slightly when you were angry, and you kind of slumped your shoulders back when your decision was final. That's when I realized the game was over. I guess this isn't the time to discuss how you're going to help me convince Uncle Bob to give me a job at eSync? June asked with a smirk. I knew she had applied and gotten a few offers, but they were all out of state. Now I'll have to stay close to home to support you. I laughed, but it made me feel a lot better. I wanted her to be her own person and do what benefited her, so I never pushed her to work for Bob and me. Of course, I would have been happy for her to come work in the family business, but now was not the time for big openings. We'll work it out, honey, was all I said. June and I sat and talked for several hours. After a few drinks, she was too drunk to drive, so we went to the lobby to get a free toothbrush. She slept in the other double bed. I heard her get up a couple times to go to the bathroom. I woke up to the sound of the shower running. June appeared fully dressed. Her hair was damp. I need to stop by the house to change, and then I'll go inside. You shower, check out, and meet me there. We need to start sorting things out, she ordered. How about breakfast first, boss? I asked. She grinned at my sarcasm and sternly told me to get my ass up, shower, and head home to change, and then we'd talk about breakfast. I didn't feel like going home alone at all. I thought I might change my mind and dump some of Donna's shit in the yard as a public statement and let her clean up after herself. Taking my time, I pulled up to my house 2 hours later and found June's car parked in the driveway. Outside was a pickup truck I had never seen before. Stepping inside, I found June having coffee with Gary, the officer we had met the night before. You were telling me how Gary, Officer Jensen, was helpful. So I wrote down his phone number and called him this morning, June offered by way of explanation. Aren't you going to get in trouble for that? I asked the young man. He shrugged and said he was off duty and today was his day off. He was sure his captain would be on board, and if not, he was thinking of a career change anyway. I went to get changed. Gary, can I ask you to tow that car that's blocking my access to the garage? I asked. He grinned and said it was my house, so I called the tow company and asked them to remove the car. Whoever left the car in the garage had to pay a towing fee and $40 a day for impound when they picked it up. June called a local company that offered climate-controlled storage and made a reservation. Soon, most of my clothes and personal items that I didn't want to risk were safely locked up. I even took the linens, towels, bed and dresser from the guest room as well as the chair and big screen TV. I took away the everyday dishes, but left Donna her beautiful china. I remembered to clean out the wine cabinet. A small thing, but I wasn't going to leave any of it behind. We still had a little time left. Dad, you need to confirm some of the things I've done for you, like transferring half of your money. I used my savings account. It can be done online, you know that. So I did the same thing you did. I called your investment broker this morning, told him you were in the process of getting a divorce, and asked if you had to come in person or if he could block your account. He said this happens all the time and he can do it. It is very easy to block it. It takes you and your mom together or a court order to unblock it. Are you okay with that? I nodded. She grinned. Good, because that's exactly what I did. I also canceled your credit cards. I claimed them as stolen, but before I did that, I paid off the balance from your bank account. All of your information was on your desk. I know you know better than to leave your book with your PIN numbers and passwords. I asked what I should do with the money. Well, I left enough money for you to withdraw $400 in cash from the ATM. Plus, remember the credit card you gave me just in case when I was in high school? Well, you can use it. You and I are on that account. Damn, you're on top of it. Do you have a beef with your mother? Gary asked. I felt like June's stare was going to make him burn to the ground. No, my mom screwed up my dad's life so he could mess around with her. If the situation was reversed and my dad was spoiled, I'd do the same thing to help my mom. I'm trying to be fair. I just won't let her ruin his life when she thinks about it. I have no doubt my mom would try to get the money out. I know my aunt. She will support my mom. And once they realize my dad isn't going to bend over for them, they're going to take action, and hard. No sooner had we left the house than the phone rang. It was Donna. Why the hell isn't my credit card working? She demanded. Demanded she? She asked. They said it was stolen. You asshole. You're offended that I found a real man and your boyish ego can't deal with it. Anyway, I'm standing in front of the ATM and I'm going to bypass it on my way to the bank to withdraw every last dime before it closes. You're not going to stop me from having a good time this weekend. I knew she would only be able to withdraw about $2,000. June transferred the rest. She'd have enough money for weeks if she didn't spend it on tonight's party. I was willing to bet she'd be the one paying for everyone's fun. You've made your decision, Donna, and I've made mine, I said quietly. I'm separating our lives in every way possible until I talk to a lawyer Monday morning. It's over between us. I hung up before she could answer. June and Gary heard the conversation. I'm hungry. Let's go get something to eat. I knew I wouldn't be able to find an apartment, and I didn't feel like staying in a hotel for the rest of the weekend. I called my brother and asked if he could take me in for the weekend. What the hell did you do? Bob asked. I replied that I hadn't done anything at all. Don't tell me Donna went completely nuts and dumped your sorry ass or kicked you out for no reason. I replied that it was much worse than that. Well, the guest room is cleaned up. Get your ass in here if you don't want me to come get you. By the way, I hope you brought all the bottles of single-barrel whiskey. Don't leave any so Donna can pour it out. I told him that all the bottles were guarded or accounted for. One I'd already put through my liver and kidneys. Don't waste any more before you get here. I want you sober enough to explain what happened before you shit your pants. I told him I was taking June out to eat and would be there in a few hours. June smirked. She looked at Gary, who looked dumbfounded. My uncle and dad break each other's balls all the time. I clicked my tongue. I'm a big girl, Daddy. That's not all I use. Anyway, Gary, Uncle Bob and Daddy have each other's backs. Their jokes don't mean anything. When the jokes end, you can tell it's serious. I'll bet their next conversation will be explicit. After we ate, they followed me to my brother's house and then went about their business. My brother and I spent most of the weekend in long conversations. His wife, Evelyn, listened for a bit at first, and then, after muttering a few remarks like vain, self-sufficient bitch, she left us alone. I wondered when the next time I'd hear from Donna would be. She didn't call me when she checked her bank balance. Around 5 o'clock on Sunday, my phone rang. Hi, Donna, I said, in as even a voice as possible. What the hell did you do? She almost shouted. Where the hell is Doris's car? I thought you were just pissed off and canceling credit cards trying to stop me from having a good time. You mean that piece of crap that was blocking access to my garage? I asked. I had it towed. I don't know what hour they work till on Sunday, but their card is on the kitchen table. You'll have to pay towing and impound fees to get your car back. I hope you set aside enough money from the party for that. Your male ego is so wounded you had to take it out on my sister? Donna growled. I could hear Doris screaming in the background, calling me different names. I told you we'd talk when I got home, and I'll tell you how it's going to be. You're going to pay for your little tantrum. You know the car will be impounded with our money, not hers. First of all, your remark about my little male ego cost you dearly. I hate that, I said, seething with rage. Second, I'm not interested in listening to you dictate to me how things should be. You've made it clear you're going to have a fling, but you found a better man, so as far as I'm concerned, he can have you. Do you really think I'm going to stay here and listen to you dictate to me how things should be? If you look around, I've moved a lot of personal belongings out of the house. I told you yesterday that I'm separating my life from yours. I'm just going to take my little bruised ego and leave you alone. So if you have anything of substance to say it or hang up. I heard her mutter. It wasn't supposed to be like that. In the background, I heard Doris say, "Tell that weakling to back off. He'll come crawling back soon." I hung up the phone. Surprisingly, I wasn't upset. I felt cold inside, completely frozen. I realized that I would probably mourn the demise of my marriage later, but right now I didn't care. But I definitely wanted revenge. I half expected her to call me back to curse me out after looking around the house, but neither Donna nor Doris said a word until the end of the next day. I took the day off to talk to our corporate lawyer, who quickly referred me to a divorce attorney. I was given the usual unhappy news about what happens in a divorce. I would lose half of everything. Fortunately for me, my trust protected my business interests. Donna earned about the same amount as I did, so alimony was not an issue. We had a few personal investments, but only about $20,000. We spent almost all of our extra income on sending June to school and bailing Doris out of her financial difficulties. Our main asset was the house, which I would have gladly sold or let Donna buy me out, which I knew she couldn't do without a large loan. We had no dependent children. Doris wasn't considered a dependent. I planned for Donna to get a subpoena the next day. Frankly, I thought I wouldn't hear a word from Donna until she was served with the summons, and then it would be vindictive yelling. Around 4 in the afternoon, she called me. "I'd like to talk," she suggested quietly. "So talk," I told her. "Not right now. I'm still at work. You can come home and we can talk in private," she said. "No," I replied laconically. "You can close your office door and talk now or call me back after you leave. But if I'm going to your house for 2 minutes of conversation or less, it's not worth it." "What do you mean 2 minutes? Is that all our marriage is worth?" she asked, perplexed and starting to get angry. "No, it's worth much more than that," I replied. "The time for a serious conversation was before you started being promiscuous." I heard her take a deep breath but interrupted her. "But I'm still willing to talk. I'd like to hear what you have to say. But I know your sister will show up now, start gagging, and I'll be out the door. Or she'll get stupid and try to block my car. This will lead to one of two things. One, she'll get towed again. Or I'll smash her window to gain access and unlock the emergency switch and be able to move her out of the way. Then I'll be arrested. She said she will make sure her sister stays off the road. Another thing that will shorten our conversation is that you'll start saying things I'm not interested in hearing. Once you do that, I'll leave. So no, you don't want to waste gas and time driving home. Same goes for a restaurant or some public place. Call me back when you're in a position to talk." I hung up. I didn't have to wait 15 minutes for her to call me back. I kept my eyes on my phone. Our phones were linked by the Find Your Phone app, so I knew she was still in her office. I wondered if she had spent the last few minutes thinking about her approach or consulting with her sister. I didn't care about either. "Hi, I can talk now," she announced when I answered. "So a few ground rules," I said. Her surprised ground rules made me chuckle. "Yeah, first off, I don't want you wasting my time explaining that the guy you cheated on me with is way more interesting than me. That would only make me more angry. He may have something more, but I don't care. You've never complained or suggested trying something more adventurous before. I don't know what that might be. We often experiment with different things. Don't tell me he complimented you and told you how beautiful you were. I did. Besides, of course he was sucking up to you. That's what guys do when they want to get in your pants." I heard another sigh, or maybe a sigh that told me she was really going to say that. "I also don't want you to start telling me that it was just sex and that you really love me." This time I heard a whimper. I suspected I was destroying all of her arguments before she even made them. And I certainly don't want to hear you threaten that if I don't submit to your new world order, your new stallion will take care of you the way you deserve. That was Doris's harsh phrase before you left. If your boy is so rich, why did you need to use credit cards that morning or go to the ATM to get money? Just because that asshole can afford a room at the Marriott and drives a Corvette doesn't mean he's rich. I flinched. I'd given myself away and shown that I knew too much. I wondered if she had guessed. She said, "How do you know he drives an 8?" she asked, "and gets married?" I interrupted her by saying, "And last but not least, don't tell me that this was your first and only instance of infidelity. The way he greeted both you and your sister shows that he knows you well. It was definitely not your first time with him. I don't care if it was the second or 100th time." "You followed us?" she exclaimed. "I'm sure you didn't hire a private investigator. You didn't even realize it until Friday night. We were so careful." I almost laughed. She'd completely forgotten about that asshole's car. I didn't want it to come back to him. So far, it hadn't. "So after hearing all these rules about what I do not want to hear, what do you say?" She started to cry. I let her cry and sipped my beer. Yes, I sat and drank beer while my marriage fell apart. "We've been together for 24 years, Donna exclaimed. "Isn't that worth saving a marriage?" I tried hard not to laugh. It wasn't a joyful or happy laugh at all. It was a laugh of disbelief. "You apparently didn't think it was worth thinking about when you started cheating," she sighed again. I interrupted her. "Tell me, did that asshole know you were married?" I asked. She hummed. "I think so. Well, I'm pretty sure. Well, yeah, he probably knew from what he said. He was giving me advice." "What kind of advice?" I asked. "He told me that if you get upset, I'll tell you how much the divorce will cost you. You'll lose half of everything you have, and you'll even have to pay me alimony," Donna said. This asshole is playing the power card, I thought to myself. He said that you wouldn't want anyone to know that you're a cuckold, that no man wants it known. He said I'd be in charge and could do whatever I wanted if I played my cards right. Doris told me the same thing. She believes him. According to her, some other women I know have forced their husbands into submission. Their marriages may be shaky, but they don't divorce because it would cost too much. So he knew we were married and didn't care. And you definitely knew we were married, and apparently you didn't care either, I said. Now I'm going to ask you about that, and then you decide if you have anything to add. What do you think we're going to accomplish by talking right now? She began to cry. I want us to stay together, for us to stay married. You really can't get over your fragile male ego, can you? She wailed. Without saying a word, I hung up the phone. I mentally berated myself for reacting so quickly. There was something else I wanted to know. Did this asshole really choose me? Did he know who I was? Orville Wendell Fontenot III, or Trey, as he was known in the company, walked into Bob's office just after lunch the next day, Tuesday. Yes, Mr. Jacobs, you wanted to see me? He asked casually. He was surprised to see me sitting off to the side, but didn't react in any way. Obviously, he didn't realize who I was. I'm sure he knew my identity, but he didn't connect me to the bitch he'd been hanging out with all weekend. Trey Fontenot was one of our liaisons and had been with the company for about a year. In some companies, he was called an opinion leader. He was a salesman of sorts. His job was to make us look good in the press and smooth over any problems with our customers. Although he wasn't a salesman, he did a lot of talking to our customers. His job was easy. We had few, if any, public image problems. His boss dealt mainly with issuing press releases about our developments, organizing trade shows, and occasionally tours of our facilities. Fontenot's main task was to promote our image. Sometimes he coordinated with our clients to make sure everyone was on the same page in terms of publicity. I considered it a waste of effort and money. In my opinion, we should have just stood our ground. Now Bob agreed. At least he was in agreement that continuing to pay Fontenot's salary was a waste of money. Tell me, you weren't in the office on Friday, Bob said. What did you do? And how did you spend the weekend? Trey looked a little puzzled. Friday I spent with a man from Global Medical, Larry Atwell. He came down from New Orleans. We coordinated our advertising efforts, and the rest of the weekend I spent in the company of some ladies. Trey stammered. May I ask why you're asking? Yes, I heard you entertained them at the Marriott. I assume Atwell was still with you. I hope it wasn't at the company's expense and those women weren't prostitutes, Bob stated. No, sir. We went out with women to have a good time, but that was Friday night after our meeting. These women were not paid. Bob asked him what this good time was all about. Well, sir, it's none of your business as it doesn't involve the company, but I will tell you that I have a little hobby of seducing willing women. I ask them out on dates, treat them to wine and dinner, and then lure them into my bed for a little fun. These two women were known to me, all consensual. How did that occur to you? Bob shook his head. Suffice it to say, that's how it happened. I want to hear the story. Sit down. Trey began to grin, relaxing. He clearly thought he was out of trouble and was even a little proud of his conquests. Well, I'm single now. I got divorced 2 years ago because I like playing the field. I like to seduce women. I get to know them, buy them a drink, give them a little dance, and if I succeed, invite them to bed. I'm pretty good at it. And it's fun. Nobody gets hurt. The bastard was 32 years old and good looking. I always thought he was a smarmy bastard. He seemed to smirk all the time. Nobody? Bob asked. How many of those ladies you meet are married? Don't they take care of their marriages? Trey's grin widened. Oh, that's where you're wrong. Most of the women I go after are married. They're the best targets. It reduces the risk of constant involvement. We just entertain each other a little. They come in two types. It makes them feel alive, sexy, and maybe a little naughty. They do things for me that they say they've never done for their husbands or haven't done since they started dating. Well, the husband doesn't know, of course. The second type is a little more difficult, but a lot of fun to work with. These are wives who want an upgrade. They want a better lover. Some of them want to improve their financial situation and actually want to leave their husband for a new guy with more money. I drive a red Corvette for a reason. That thing attracts attention. I even have a few different looks. I used to be Lance Sutherland. There's a lumber store in Shreveport with that name. I tell the women that I come here to buy lumber to process and sell to my company. Bob asked him if women really fall for that phrase. Trey laughed. Most don't even think about it. In bars, they know me as Lance. No last name. But I use a credit card in that name in case I'm addressed that way in a hotel or restaurant. I pay with the card and the women don't pay attention to it. Lately, I've become Lance Parker, the oil man. I make up fake IDs and leave them on the hotel room table. Let the women see them and think they look important. And then I pick them up with my laptop and put them in my briefcase before the party. The broads are having fun and their asses are sitting at home waiting for them to come back. Some of the women even think I will take them away to a better life if their husbands leave them. I think even if the husbands find out, most of them forgive their wives after a while. At least no husband has ever pursued me yet. I have a third group of wives who want to get their husbands to be on guard. You know, obey their wives or lose half their shit. I give these wives all kinds of advice on what to do. They let the asshole know that they're doing fine, and they don't dare make waves. The funny thing is, the law and the courts are on the wife's side. The husband gets raked over the coals, and the wife gets the cream of the crop. Like the old Jerry Reed song, she's got the gold mine, and I've got the mine. Bob asked him how he meets women. I hang out at a couple clubs where women come to get picked up. It's easy. I'm known as a nice guy who can afford a room at the Marriott. I have a bit of a reputation. I try to behave appropriately. Some women introduce me to other women, like the woman from this weekend. They're very beautiful. They are just over 40 and they are both very sexy. I met them, and when Larry came to town, I invited them to join us at the Marriott for the weekend. They gladly accepted. Women love to be fondled. His grin turned into a wide grin. How can you afford to go to the Marriott every weekend? Bob asked. It must be expensive. That's the beauty of the plan. Trey grinned, almost glad he'd told the story. My cousin is the night manager. He blocks my room early in the morning and then changes it on the computer after midnight to say it's unoccupied. I don't pay a dime. The cleaners come, see that the room needs to be cleaned, and they clean it. No one recognizes anything. This weekend I rented a suite, 2 bedrooms and a living room, all for free. The women thought I was rich. Larry and I entertained them, and they loved it, Trey said. He didn't notice me clenching my hands into fists. I wanted so badly to get up and punch him. They did all that and you didn't have to pay them? Bob asked, seeming relieved. Did you use alcohol or were they just whores? Larry and I used Viagra, but even then you get tired after a while and have to rest. Well, I have a couple questions about that, as interesting as it is, Bob said. First of all, have you ever harassed any women at NSYNC? No, sir, Trey said. My father taught me from an early age to never litter where I eat. I know we have strict rules of non-brotherhood. So you pick up women in town, and when you go out of town, do you do anything like that? Bob asked. I mean, you provide entertainment for Larry Atwell here. Does he reciprocate and do anything like that for you when you go out of town? That leads me to ask if the other company reps we work with do the same. I don't want this to backfire on us. Just Larry, Trey said. Global has a swanky apartment, so we pick up women there and use the place. So you pick up women here and there. One more question. Would your expense account pass inspection if we looked closely? Bob asked. Suddenly, Orville Fontenot, aka Trey, aka Lance, became very nervous. Bob smiled, and I saw him discreetly press a button on his desk. Now, we will examine your expense records very carefully, and if we find that you are abusing the system, we will take one or both of the following actions. We'll prosecute you for theft or embezzlement or whatever the lawyers call it. But either way, we'll deduct the money from your last paycheck. Last paycheck? Trey gritted his teeth. You're firing me? For what? For taking whores to a hotel? Yeah, you piece of shit. See, one of those whores you had fun with this weekend, Donna, is my ex-wife, I said from my side of the room. And the other one is my sister-in-law? I was glad he hadn't guessed anything. He stared at me for a few brief moments before he muttered, "Oh shit." A couple guards entered the room and Trey looked at Bob and then at me. You can't fire me for entertaining your wife, he stated, coming to his senses. It was consensual. That's not my problem. I'm going to sue both of you for wrongful termination. You should research the law. Louisiana is an at-will state. We can fire you for any reason and at any time, unless it's something protected by law, like discrimination. And this fun with your boss's wife certainly doesn't fall into that category. Now, these two gentlemen will escort you to your office to gather your personal belongings. I'd advise you to leave before any of the staff finds out what a low-life piece of shit you are. Trey changed tactics. Fire me and I'll tell everyone I entertained your wife. He smirked. Everyone will know they're total whores. Please do it, I begged. It'll save me a lot of extra effort. You want to be called a cuckoo? He asked incredulously, pausing. I don't want anyone to think I'm being unfair to my wife when I divorce her, I replied. As he was being escorted out, he started yelling loudly that he was being fired for entertaining Jacobs's wife. What do you say we leave early, little brother? Bob said with a smirk. I feel like having a beer or three. We've got another episode in a couple hours that we need to get ready for. I agreed. I was shaking from the adrenaline rush, but I let Bob lead me out the door. I knew his secretary and the security guys had overheard the entire conversation. Considering that, and Trey's rant, by the end of the day, everyone in the company would know. It didn't bother me one bit. You know, Trey was yelling about entertaining Jacob's wife. He didn't say which Jacobs. I laughed. Evelyn will be pissed if people think it was her. Bob groaned. Now I really need a beer, he said. Trey better get out of town. We laughed as we left. Bob and I were sitting in his living room sipping beers at 5 o'clock when my phone rang. Sitting with us were my daughter June and a young police officer named Gary. They seemed to enjoy each other's company and sat side by side on the couch. I realized they were spending quite a bit of time together when Bob's wife Evelyn invited June over for Sunday lunch, and she declined, saying she had a date with a man she had just met. She was too busy to meet with me in the previous evening. I wasn't the least bit surprised when he accompanied her this afternoon and, frankly, fully approved. You miserable piece of shit, came Donna's voice through the speaker of my phone. Do you have any idea how humiliated I was? Do you have any idea what you could have cost me a promotion and even my job? How could you do that, after all our years together? I hope you don't lose your job, I replied, trying to keep a straight face. I'd hate to pay alimony to my unemployed ex-wife, but I don't care at all if your promotion is jeopardized. You may have earned it. To be honest, I timed your speech to coincide with the start of the school board meeting. And I can tell you were deeply humiliated. But why would I do that after all these years together? Remember how you mocked me by saying that your cheating and whoring hurt my fragile male ego? You even repeated that phrase when we talked yesterday. Well, I hope your fragile female ego was hurt too. In the video I saw, it looked exactly like that. A video? She exclaimed. Of course it did. My lawyer said I shouldn't be present, so I sent someone to record it, I said. Speaking of video, I'm going to send you a videotape of Orville Wendell Fontenot III, or should I say turd, detailing how you and Doris were his whores all weekend. Oh, I forgot. You don't know him by that name. But he did tell Bob and I how he entertained you last weekend. Apparently, he works, or rather used to work at eSync, and makes it his hobby to seduce married whores at the local pickup centers. Now, I would advise you to get a lawyer quickly so you can sign and return the divorce papers. I'd hate to send copies of these videos to everyone, like your parents. They're old. I like them. But there comes a point where I stop feeling sorry for them. I don't want them to think I'm the bad guy in our divorce. That's something you and Doris should take care of. Yes, it's part of my gross male ego, but I'm not going to be the villain here. I've been brutally honest about the terms offered. Equal division with no alimony. When you sell the house, you can continue to help your sister financially, at least for a while, until you run out of money. I would suggest you move in together and you will manage the money. I know she gave you bad advice and introduced you to Orville, or Lance as he wants to be called, but you two can still work things out. If you keep your ugly selfishness out of the way, I heard her cry as we passed out. I looked around the room and shrugged. In the video, it took her a while to stop crying after being served. I wonder how long it will take her now. I'll never know. Before I called Donna, I had already had time to watch the videotape of her being served. She had just finished a meeting with the school board. They were discussing her advancement in the school board system. The videotape showed her leaving, smiling, followed by several board members. I suspected it went very well in her favor. That expression was replaced by an expression of confusion when a young paperwork clerk approached her and asked if she was Donna Jacobs. When she confirmed that she was handed an envelope and announced that she had received a subpoena. But when she repeated one silly phrase, I couldn't accept her deception and, needing additional male companionship because of my fragile male ego, went one step further. A man dressed like an ancient herald ran into the foyer and announced in a loud voice, "Listen, listen, Donna Jacobs, now known as the traitor whore, has been sentenced." Immediately, the two young women standing next to him started chattering away on their gazulkas. At first, I thought they were just going to trumpet, but they started playing a tune similar to the wedding song, "Here Comes the Bride." Then, all three of them started singing, "Here comes the whore, her marriage is over." They turned and walked out of the auditorium, playing the tune on their gazulkas. The video ended with Donna collapsing to her knees and bursting into tears. No one paid any attention to the young police officer who stood off to the side and filmed what was happening on his cell phone. "Daddy, Gary recorded this for you, but please don't send it," my daughter June pleaded. I begged him not to record it, but he said he promised. He said his word was his bond. I told her that from now on, the only person who would be able to see the video would be her mother, unless she asked for a divorce. And Donna will, of course, get a copy of the videotaped interview with Fontenot when she leaves. Epilogue. Donna didn't fight the divorce. Her attorney told her that my terms were reasonable and in compliance with current divorce law. As expected, she begged to go to counseling to save our marriage. I knew from her angry look when she opened her mouth to say that I couldn't get over her actions and forgive her, after 20-plus years of marriage, that she was going to mention my fragile male ego again. Say it. Say fragile male ego once. If I hear you or your sister say that phrase one more time, I'm going to send out all the videotapes, especially to your parents, I said. She stopped talking and stared at me, crying. She hated that she would have to sell the house we owned. It wasn't good enough for her until she was forced to sell it. It was a palace then. I really hoped she wouldn't give most of the proceeds to pay her sister's bills. June said she would step in and try to prevent that from happening. I didn't care. Orville, aka Trey, aka Lance, was having a hard time finding a job even remotely similar to the one he'd taken. Maybe the theft charge for misuse of an expense account had worsened his chances for the future. Or maybe it was the laughter he heard from the human resources representatives of any potential company when they called and inquired about his employment history. few of them demanded further explanation. Trey's legal problems were compounded when the Marriott Hotel Corporation filed charges against him and his cousin for theft of services. I didn't even know it happened, but a night manager is not authorized to provide rooms, especially for sexual favors. The corporation publicized the situation to set an example for their employees across the country. I heard that the charges were eventually dropped, but only after Orville and his cousin went broke trying to pay a $300 an hour lawyer. Global Medical quickly fired and replaced Larry Atwell, a friend of Trey's. He joined Trey in the ranks of the unemployed. Someone must be keeping an eye on his future career, just as someone here at home is keeping an eye on Trey's career. Of course, I've lost too. My marriage of 24 years has been shattered. It would take me a while to regain my trust in women, but I'd met a few who assured me I could get back in the saddle without much effort. They would help me. They were there to convince me that I was wrong to judge women by two from my family. On the other hand, I no longer had to face a cheating wife and a parasitic daughter-in-law. The only ones left to benefit from the whole affair were my daughter June and future son-in-law Gary, a former police officer and my current Prot DG, the end. Thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel and stay tuned for the next videos.